Thank you. Good morning. I guess it's still morning. My name's Randy Carey. I'm from Minnesota. I've been working with Joomla for a few years, and I have been working a lot with client development, and I'm shifting more back. Shifting more to just regular like component development, that sort of a thing, or that's my goal after the holidays, with a particular interest in tailoring the Joomla experience for the client. So building extensions, that sort of thing that work in that area. And I will be explaining that in just a few moments. My mom is 80 years old, and for the last 10 years, she's never used a computer. The only phone she uses, aside from when she has to go somewhere, is one that's got the tethered on the wall, and she did get rid of the rotary a while ago. but she isn't technically savvy, and she's 80 years old now, and she's getting to the point where she gets a little confused once in a while. And so for the last 10 years, the only time she's had a little track phone is because she's going in the car, and in case she starts feeling something in the chest or has an accident or whatever, something happens, she can call one of her sons and ask, or even the hospital if she needed to. So last year she needed a new phone. We bought her this phone. This looks rather simple to any of us. I'm sure any of us could just pick it up and use it. So we set it up, and I have two brothers, and all three of us had our names entered in there and hotkeys you could push with our numbers and our wives' names as well. And I started explaining, well, you have to push this button here in order to get the list of our names. And why the left instead of the right? I don't know. That's just the way it was. When you started out, you got something like this. But you don't want to push this button because it goes to the internet. And you don't have internet access, and they'll start charging you, and you don't want to do that. And you don't want to push this because it's email, and you've never used email. And I said, if you have a problem, push the down key. That will keep getting you back. She's never used a computer. What's the down key? And why the down key instead of the up key, the left key, the right key, sort of a thing? All of us probably can operate this, but for that particular use and for that particular client, if you want to say, this was not a very usable one. And if you see parallels with CMSs and training people, don't push this key or you might cause a problem. And you always go back doing this. And what's the terminology again? Why the left? Why the right? It makes sense. I mean, there's a parallel there. So we got her something like this that she hangs around her neck. If she has any kind of problems with her health, if she has an accident, if she has anything stalled or whatever, she just pushes the button. And within 20 seconds, somebody comes on and says, hello, Mrs. Carey. How can I help you? And this GPS, they know where she's at. And she says, I fell and I can't. And she did break her hip once, so she needed something like this. And somebody will immediately direct her to the right person or call an ambulance or whatever. And all she has to remember is push that one button. With a phone, I was pretty sure that if she had an issue, she'd be all flustered and couldn't use it. With this, I'm pretty sure she could use it. And that's about as simple as you can get for that particular use, for that particular client. About 6-7 years ago, there was a paper that came out that talked about why people choose CMSs and all the different options. And they say features and usability are two of the biggest criteria. But as you start going with companies that have casual users or a team of business people that are more interested in their business needs instead of the technology, then usability of the CMS is more important than the features. Let me say that again. Usability in some cases can be more important than the features in selecting the CMS. And for those that are savvy, not just the CMS, but the vendor who provides the CMS. It's very important for us. We think of the CMS, we think of there's two audiences, a front end and a back end, right? We've got the person who's viewing the site and buying the products or learning information, and we got the person in the back end who's developing the site. But we're forgetting there's a third person in here. It's the client and the staff that has to maintain content. We lump them quite often with ourselves who develop sites, but that's not necessarily true. They have a different approach and reason for attacking the CMS and for also the skill level. They don't want to know all the technical things. They just want to get that web page updated. And so I'm suggesting that as we style and put usability in the front end, we should consider that also for our client and staff, whether it's on the back end or front end. We as technical people, we can pick up all these technical things, and usability is great for us, but I think we got to make sure we get the right type of usability for that particular client, which has different needs and interests and motivations than we as developers. The common user maybe only uses the site CMS once a week, less than that. Some use it more often, but they see the website as a series of pages, and they see a page as different pieces of content. We look and see all the technical things that go behind it. And so when we build a website and we've got all these things like what's K2 and things like that, we know what they are, but does our client know what they are? Are we helping our client by giving them the exact same interface that we use to build the website? And we've got a lot more help, and it's a lot cleaner when we go to 3.0, but it still has a lot of things they have to understand what a menu is and this and that. And can we get closer to that one button sort of thing when we're dealing with a particular client and their needs? There is a known tension between, between feature-rich and easy to use. If something is feature-rich, you have to have a lot of options, and it's naturally going to be more complex. And if you have something easy to use, it's easy to use because it's simple, like the one button sort of a thing. It only does one thing for that. It isn't flexible for several different purposes. And so we have this tension. If we put our CMSs, whether it's Joomla or any of the competitors or other alternatives out there, we put ourselves somewhere on this grid. Which CMS is easier or better? This is easier but has more features, and we look at it that way as if it's one long line of features and ease of use, and it's somewhere on this scale. But we can break that line if we realize there are two different audiences. And this is the whole key to what I'm trying to suggest. What we get out of the box is made for us as developers and has all the features. But our client wants ease of use. They want the features, and maybe we can only push the ease of use down so far. But if we realize we have an interface for our clients that's a little bit different than that for the person developing the site, now we can tailor this so this doesn't need to have all the features. It focuses more on ease of use. Yet, in the back end, we still have all the features we want. The best of both worlds. We break the tension by basically realizing we have two audiences and addressing each audience independently. And here's an example of an interface. Very simple. All that this person needs to do is manage testimonials and a calendaring event like events, what new events coming up and information like that. And here we're putting together the whole site. So the strategy needs to be focused on the fact there is a third type of user, or in the back end, a different type of user. If we focus on that, we can have a different approach than what we've had before. And also, we need to be able to embrace complexity, understand all the parts behind Joomla, maybe even if we understand PHP and CSS and things like that, or at least somebody in our team does, we can handle all this complexity so we can deliver simplicity to our client, tailored to what each client needs. Each client's going to be different, of course. And so, there's work to be done. The white arrows will represent the works of us as a vendor or a supplier to our clients. The first work is making sure we separate a different experience from what we get out of the box. There's nothing wrong with what's out of the box. It's just our clients. If we can tailor it, we can make it better. The second one, and probably the more important work, is how do we drive down what we get out of the box to make it simpler and more appropriate and more tailored for what our clients need. Driving this down. That's where much of the work is going to be. Let me also point out that making usability is a vendor added value. Joomla might have a lot of usability built into it, and I think it does. But to go the extra route that I'm talking about, it's something that it's up to us. And if we don't want to put the effort in there, then we're stuck more with that bar at the top. But if we want to get to this thing, it's up to us to tailor it for each particular client that we have. So this is something very simple. Here's a person logging in, and maybe there's different people see different views on this particular site, but this person has access to events. And this is that one button touch, right? You click on that button, and you get your calendaring event, and you can see the list of events and go ahead and edit that sort of a thing. And this person has maybe one role, fulfilling the orders for a store. But they have two tasks. They click and they can start, well, I'm going to manage the orders, or I'm going to manage the customers. Or you can expand beyond that. And then here's somebody that's actually, there's 8 tasks divided between 4 roles, as I would call that. So each of these, if a person's assigned for testimonials, they see that. And they see each of these little white boxes. And here's the little clicks, the jumping points they go to start going through a workflow for managing that particular task. That's really simplifying it. And here's an example of a pet store where they say they have testimonials, they're managing information about their staff, and they're managing their inventory of puppies. And all they do is they click on the puppies, they see the list of puppies, they click on the particular list, and they get a very easy edit screen with the terminology that they want in order to maintain information about the puppies. And I set this up for a pet store, and their business started really taking off because people didn't have to keep driving in looking at puppies. They can go online and see it. And but the person wasn't very technically savvy, so you got to give them a very easy interface, something like that. Again, this doesn't come free. It comes by extra work, building a custom component maybe in this particular case, or finding out what fields they really need and getting them ordered just right. There is work to be done. I keep asking, one of my mantras is, we can do better. It's not that what we have is bad, because it's good, it's great. But think about how can you improve. You never get, if somebody's a pretty good pianist, for instance, how do they improve and play better? Practice and thinking about, what are things am I doing wrong? I'm not doing my arpeggios or whatever it is. What can we do better in providing usability for our clients? Think what can be, and not just looking at examples what other people have done, and say, how can I get there? And so I've got two main sections I want to talk about. So first I want to talk about the principles in any CMS of giving usability to our clients. And then after that I want to tell about a few techniques that I use in Joomla. So the first groups of principles I put in the simplify category. We want to simplify the experience for the user. And one is to get rid of all those fields and things that have no relevance for the client. When you force a client to look at all these extra tabs and fields, you're telling them, only some of these are important, or some of these are required. But they have to not only remember how to use the system, they have to remember what to use and what not to use. You're adding to their burden. And if they only access a system every other week, come on. I mean, they're going to have to pull out the document. It's not an easy-to-use system. The other simplification, we want to use terms that tie into their business. In this case, testimonials, staffs, and puppies. It's pretty obvious. You've got the icons there that help illustrate what it is. And we ourselves are going to worry about all the stuff in the background, the templates, the alternative layouts, the components, the plugins, whatever it is. We handle that. They don't need to know anything about that, unless they really, really want to. But many clients who are maintaining content, they're not in it for the technology. They're in it for maintaining their content. Simplify the workflow. Have a very easy starting point for them to click. Then it's kind of like the widget, right? It kind of guides you step 1, step 2, step 3. When you think of it, Joomla does provide something like that. I mean, we've got the launching point, it could be a menu item or a dashboard icon, gives you the list, and then when you click on that, you go, here's a form that's tailored especially for that task that the person's trying to do. Avoid multiple paths to the same task. This can be debatable. I understand that. And for a power user, I want to be able to go here and do this. I want to be able to go there and do it. But if you got the casual user, you're telling me I could do it this way and that way. Which way should I do it? Well, whichever you want. And it's like, well, I just want to get the work done. Tell me which way. I mean, I don't know if you've experienced that before, but that can be a common issue. Why are we giving them multiple things? We think we're giving them options, but really we're making them think more, and they have to remember what things are optional and what things are required. And right there, you're making the system more complicated. So if you're working with very casual or business-minded people, give them one path, the widget or whatever that's going to lead them through. So in this case, dashboards or menu items. Depends what you want. I like the dashboard items because when they're working on a component, they don't see all these other options up there distracting them. They can click on and jump away from what they're doing. They're kind of forced through this sequence of events. That's my preference. Then the next group of principles is tailoring. And we want to tailor our website, our interface based on different aspects of the clients. For instance, their capabilities. This is the casual user and the power user, and they each have different interests and motivations and capabilities. We want to do it by authority. Is somebody just managing content, or are they also administrating the site? And that's at two extremes. You've got several layers in between we might want to segment them into. And then the areas to manage. Do they do testimonials, calendaring, newsletters, the store, whatever areas, and maybe levels of permission, that sort of thing. But segmenting the users helps us give them a more tailored approach to the CMS. Users' mental model. They don't see the site technically like we do, as I said before. They see it as a series of pages, and they see a page as an aggregation of different content. And so work with that, leverage that when they go somewhere. Let them know when they're doing this, they're touching that. And it could be front-end entity is a great way of implementing something like that. But even with your documentation or in the back end, maybe you have a little icon showing what page they're actually editing. There's an idea. And also with the user's mental model, we want to use task-based interfaces. They're coming in because they want to edit content or they want to edit an event and have the terms that they want to do and launching points that way that they know exactly what's happening. We aren't making them guess with, oh, I have to go down to K2 or one of these other things and try to follow this whole long flow. Make it very task-based because they're coming there with a task. They're not coming around to play around and see what the CMS can do. Okay, insulate against errors. And there's several types of errors. The common one would be if somebody started injecting HTML and they don't close a table tag or something, and then you go to the page after they saved it, the whole thing falls apart. So with JCE and other editors, you can actually suppress it that they can't add HTML. Now, a power user might want it, but we have to use our own intuition or savvy to know who do we give, block them from HTML or these sorts of things, and insulate them so they can't make mistakes. Similar to that, insulate against unnecessary decisions. Do we want them to always remember this is a heading and they have to make it an H2? Maybe just give them a line of enter text, and in the layout, we're automatically going to apply the H2 dot whatever class it is. And then it styles exactly that way. Why make them do all that sort of thing? Then they'll be making more errors, or their form. I don't know about you, but I've seen people who you give them freedom of formatting, they take advantage of that freedom. Everything's bold, or everything's multiple colors. I had a client last week who said, we want the header that goes over the sub-menus. We want to be able to change the text, the font, the color, the size for every menu, whatever we want to do. And it's like, usually, a CMS applies consistency. Well, we're all going to be admins. We're all going to do that. And so, you got to give the client, I guess, what they want or move on. But this is an example of just giving them very simple options. Maybe a drop-down with only 2 or 3 options instead of them trying to remember what CSS class to type in or things like that. Insulate against escalated privileges. In other words, consider a person they go in, they edit content, but once every month they're going to go out, or once a week, let's say, they go out and do a backup. But most of the times they're getting in there editing content. Consider giving them 2 user accounts, one for the normal content thing, which just shows them what they need to do, and one that gives them more administrative privileges so they can do backups. Now, this is debatable. You don't have to, but consider that option. Joomla does require 2 different email addresses for each account, but it doesn't have to say that second one is a valid email address. Or it could go to a forwarding address so the person gets the emails reminding them of their password either way. But consider something like that. It just insulates them so they're only working, say, with content management and not site administrator. Because they're wearing 2 different hats, then let them, when they wear the one hat, they do one. They wear the other hat, let them do the other one. So we can do better. There's a lot of ways. We got to think about the areas to improve. It does take work. I'm going to keep pointing that out. It takes work for us if we want to make that improvement. Here's 6 techniques that I've come up with that I use when I work with clients, trying to improve their experience. And the first one is front-end editing. They all love it. Unfortunately, we don't have as much of it as I think we should have, that I'd like to see us have. But I mean, you just go there to the front end, you see the page you want, you see if you have rights, you see a little icon of some sort, you click and you can edit it. And of course, the users think their mental model is a series of pages, pieces of content on each page, so we got to follow that. Now, here's an example, of course, of editing in the front end. And I say, how can we do better? Unfortunately, there's not a lot of components out there, and that's one of the things I want to start working and try to see if I can build some more. But let's say in this case, the showcase where you rotate and have an image and text. Why not, if the person has the rights, click on that. Maybe they don't change all the settings in the module, but they can change the photos and the text and the order of those photos. Maybe that's all they can change, but let them do that on the front end, if you could. Let them change a number of items in that list. And if we want to insulate them against errors, maybe we say we're only going to show the first 4 because they show 5. Now all of a sudden things break, and as far as the layout, you push it down too far. So that's an example of insulating them from mistakes. And then the modules, why not let them click on it and update which modules are going to show or change the text? And from the front end, we don't have a lot of those at this point. I don't think it'd take a lot. I've actually played with it and been able to come up with some solutions to these. And I think if we drive in a little bit more, we can come up with a lot more solutions. Of course, each module is different, And you're going to have to add extra code yourself if you try to do it, or else you find modules that actually allow front end. So this is more like where I think we should be going. And here's an example of a menu. Wouldn't it be nice if they could just, hear the header. You can click on that and you can change, well, our hours this weekend are extended or whatever. And you can click on each menu item, and maybe it's not the full back-end editing, but the person can go in there and change prices from the summer to the fall list or whatever. And maybe they edit the whole item, but item by item, we have some little icon for them to edit. Wouldn't that be great? And we really could build it in. It'd be nice for the extension builders to do it, but it's doable, and that's the goal. So if we can do editing in the front end, should we do everything in the front end? I'm resistant to that, and I haven't heard a lot of people talking about what you can do. I've heard, well, maybe it'd be great to do it all in the front end. Well, then why have a back end? So let me just talk about, just briefly, a couple ideas what I think should go where. And I think on the front end is things that match the user's mental model. In other words, they know this is a showcase. They understand what's going on. There's slides to go through. They don't understand all the detail, but they understand that. They understand the content, the different modules, that sort of a thing. It matches their mental model of the website. But then you've got things like list, where you can look at them at a glance. You can reorder them. You can select them by category. You can publish them by just quick click. That's probably more of a forest view than a tree view, and I think that works a little better in the back. You've got web applications like a store, managing customers and orders things. They don't really have a correspondence on the front end like articles would. So I think that works better, web applications on the back end. Structural things like menus, module positions, things like that, probably better in the, I know some people are talking about adding landing pages with a menu item up top. Okay, but where do you cross the line? Because if somebody adds a new menu item, what about the modules that go on there? There's a whole lot of issues that's infrastructures like, if a person understands it, should they be doing it on the front end? I'm just raising my own doubts or questions about that. And of course, there's administrative things such as assigning permissions, working with users, user groups, access levels, and a lot of things like that, that really, hey, it's got to go in the back end. It doesn't go in the front. So I think when it matches the user's mental model of the site, you can put in the front end. A lot of things we still got to keep in the back. OK, so since we're working with the back, and I've talked about having a different view of the CMS for the client, then let's talk about what the client backend might look like. Here in the top left, you've got something that's more for what we do as a development. And this is more, in the bottom right, is more simpler for the client. If we have something called an admin template, could there be such a thing, virtually, like a client template? A template that's geared for the client. Now, the structure of Joomla is obviously set that we have admins and site templates. And I'm not suggesting that somebody creates a third type, but could we set this up so virtually we have a different template that has a different layout or look and feel for the client that's appropriate for them, that's different from the admin? Because a lot of times I hear discussion about how can we improve the admin. They're thinking, well, how can we improve it for the client without compromising what we're doing for the admins? You split them. And then you answer different issues and usability needs for each one. So how do we do this? Well, one is with the ACL, the Access Control List, which a lot of people don't understand, and that's one reason why I've kind of gone a little deeper into that area to help me understand how I can give a better user experience in the back end. You have the administrator and super maybe can use this, and then if you went to the ACL talk that Sandra and I gave yesterday, Sandra gave the example, he just takes manager, administrator, editor, author, publisher, deletes them all. And all you got is public and super, and then you add what you need. And then I talked about role-based user groups or role-based access levels. And by doing that, then we give people only what they need, and we can come up with an interface more like this, where we don't have all these more complex things showing up, only what they need, which is called the principle of least permissions. The other thing you could do is a template assignment. For instance, this is maybe in conjunction with it. With 2.5, for instance, maybe you say our admins we're going to make every site, by the default, mission control, which is going to be the client. So when the client adds new people, they automatically get this bottom one. But if you are an admin or need a special background access, the developer or whatever, you can assign yourself or be assigned to Blue Stork, and now you see the whole admin template. Another advantage of something like this, if you know how to override views on the front end, you override them in the back end as well. And so all these modules these are actually admin modules. And the overrides we put on this particular template, mission control, will not cascade over to Bluestork if that's what you want to do, and use some special layout overrides for the client view only. So ACL, and consider using different template assignments. I wrote this article for the Joomla magazine back last spring sometime, showing how you can actually take the admin menu and you can customize it for your clients versus what you get for a developer. The bottom one is what we see out of 2.5, the typical one, site users, all these great terms that we readily understand, but might confuse some clients. And these are all terms specific to a particular client. Their content, their store with their orders, customers, drop down, newsletters, that's really what they want. They don't really want the bottom one, they want the top one because it's tailored to their needs. And there's the techniques for going ahead and overriding the menu bar in the admin based upon either ACL, or if you use two different templates, you just use the client admin bar in the client template and use the regular one for the admin template. So we come up with something like this. I also like using, I like using icons. I use mission control, which comes with a nice admin module called Rock Quick Links. And it gives you this option. You can type the title. You can add more, take away, reorder them. Add the title. You put the URL for the backend admin. So it's like index PHP question mark option equals this. You can actually add filtered parts into the URL. So if you want to go to a particular category in articles and not just to articles, you can do that. And then you put the icon. And the newest version even allows you to open a new window or not, that sort of thing. But this is an easy way to create your different icons that you want. And each one of these modules then might have its own access level tied to a particular role-based access group, which is getting a little deeper than I have time to explain, but that's how I'm able to set it up so when a person is allowed to see testimonials, they only see this because it's one of these. And I create another one of these for events, that sort of thing. So it takes work. It's not going to happen. I mean, we can make it. Are you willing to do the extra work? Role-based ACL. Again, I wrote a couple articles, August, September issue, on why role-based ACL, and also give an explanation how to use it in the admin section. I don't have time to talk about how to do it now. If you're interested in that topic, go back and read it. But the whole purpose is, if somebody, you have a user, we check them off for what they have rights to do, and based off on what we check, that's what they see in the back end. So this person has rights for the site auditor, so they get to see statistics and who's logged in and things like that. The other person, they don't see that information. They only see the task that they need to do. The way we could do this is with the 1.5 model was a very totem pole, like a progressive permissions level. You had public and inherited from that was registered, and it's very linear. With 2.5, we don't have to do that. We can make it very sibling. Basically, instead of thinking of the totem pole of permission, think of it as a pie of all the things you can do in your site. And you put it into different slices. And each role is one of those slices based upon what areas you can access and what permissions you can do. They tend to be non-overlapping and independent of each other. That's why you have this list of very meaningful names of roles that tie into business roles. You click this, 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 this. It brings them to the corresponding access and permission rights in Joomla. And so people have different roles. You check what you want, and you get something like this. As well as not only do you get to see the things they can access when you click, they do have access to those parts and only those parts. So role-based access control is really important, I think, for giving an improved user experience on the back end. Again, it takes work. Clients edit screens. This is a big thing. I think some of these things you might think is a little harder to do. Not that much. I mean, this is Red Shop from a couple of years ago, so it's an older shot. But I mean, they've got all these fields, all these tabs, and it's a very powerful component. And like I said, you've got a lot of features and power. You've got a lot of complexity, a lot of things in there going on. So they have to add all those things, but we don't have to show them all. How many of you have ever overridden the view on a site? You know what I'm talking? Okay. You can basically take, it's going to look this way, but I'm going to overwrite it, so I'm moving fields around in content. You can do the exact same thing in the admin side and override the view. This form is a view with different fields. You can look at the PHP code and see how it's really a table with a label and that sort of thing. Override it, and you come up with something like this. And I'm able to add a little CSS to it so that they only see the fields that's relevant for them. They only see the tabs that's relevant for them. I made it bold, the only two they really work with, but if they want to, they've got these options. And I moved the image from here. Well, they set the image there. I at least put the image on that home page because instead of showing text, that's a quick look to see what product it is they're looking at. And they know the darker ones are the ones they have to put in if they're creating a new product or managing. The other ones, this is kind of important, but it's not required of them to work with it. And these are lesser required. And there's an example what the screen was like before. And here's an example of just taking the PHP code and basically extracting it or writing CSS around it to block it so it doesn't get shown, whichever you want to do. And I'm not adding functionality. I'm just taking away a lot of that, shifting a few things around, and I'm still talking to the Red Shop engine that does all the managing of updating the content and displaying the content, that sort of thing. It's not that. I mean, if you've never overridden, try that. But once you get a hang for it, you can do some incredible improvements on the back end by a technique like this. Here's what on their store. Also, I had a client that built furniture, and he wanted to sell green treated and red cedar at different rates. Well, this is also a complex component with several different things going on. And so I took it and overrode it and made it just what my client wanted. No more, no less. He can type in the text. He can order which one. He can say which one is going to be pre-selected. And he can say how much the price deviates from the standard price. That's all he needs. Go ahead.
How do you protect those overrides from upgrades?
Overrides are protected from upgrades. No, you could do that. I mean, you could. I've done some of that too. But what an override does, you take the file out of the component. In this case, it's in the admin. Okay. It normally is under the slash components. This is slash admin slash components slash com red shop. If you do this enough, you know where it's all at. Slash views, and then under views, you got all the different views. And under every view, there's a slash TMPL. And under that TMPL, all those files can be overridden. And they are the files that show the face of the website. So I look at that, pick it up, move it to my template. In this case, it's mission control. So I go to mission. It goes like template slash mission control slash HTML, which is the directory that holds all the overrides, slash, and then I go com underscore red shop. And this is all, it's under administrator templates, okay? It wasn't the regular templates. So you got to remember you're working the administrator in this. And then I just copy this file over. I don't even, and there, you can get online and learn how to do it. But you copy it over, and so when they upgrade com red shop or any of the other ones, they don't touch what's in that template file. And if I have the user use a different template, those overrides are only applied to the template mission control for me. That's why if I had BlueStork be for admins, they aren't going to pick up these changes. They get the full features, but mission control would get only that. There's ways you can make it work for both, but that's the approach. So overrides are a great way. I use it all the time because it's a great way for me to add customization, and it avoids the hacks and overrides or things that get overwritten when you do an upgrade. So we can do better, and when you work with an extension, look at it and say, are they offering fields? Are they ordering this? Are they using terms that don't really make sense to my clients? Go in and override it. Use the terms that make sense to them. Take out fields that aren't needed. Reorganize it. If they have multiple tabs that can all be put in one, do that. I mean, it takes work, but you can do it. The next one is segment our users. And I've already mentioned that a little bit as far as we have role-based things, so people have access only to certain roles. But we also think about the infrequent and the casual versus the frequent and the power user. Let's face it, a lot of people using it, they don't care. They aren't motivated to use the site quite as well, and they need something very simple. And you might even get some people, they barely know how to use a Word document. So you've got to maybe tailor things for them, but you can't tailor it until you start segmenting them. So what I do is I try to have different classes that are not role-based, but like different user groups that will help tell if they're, by default, they're maybe all in this middle one, standard. But I do have a light version that I'm going to kind of help them along or keep them from breaking things because they don't know what they're doing that much except adding a little bit of text. And then the power users, give them what they want because they're banging at this every day. I mean, or whatever, whatever level of skill they're at. And then in the editor, JCE allows us to configure different profiles for different users. And so you tie these profiles to those classes that I was talking about. And so for the light one, they don't see nearly as many options. Actually, this is more options than I want to give them. I don't know if I want to give them the bold. I'll make everything bold, right? But I mean, you can make it so all they can do is undo and redo. You could take away so they can't do anything. So then the middle use, you got to talk to each client and figure out what it is you want. That's also a selling point. Tell them I can give you whatever kind of edit screens you want and tailor it for your different levels of users. That's a selling point. And then your power users give them everything, like how to work with tables. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't really get HTML tables, and they'll break things if you start giving it to them. So you don't want to give it to them unless they either it's a part of their job responsibilities or they're capable of doing it. And that's a science that's not, I can't talk about in technology. You just have to kind of figure out by talking to your clients what's the right solution. But you can do it. And also with JCE, I mean, I don't know if you've ever gone to JCE. It's like there's pages of stuff and so many different options you can set. It's so incredibly powerful. You can really tailor an awful lot if you just focused on the JCE. For instance, your regular users of contents, their root is really this staff right there. So they only get access to files there. It could be documents, it could be images, it could be media videos. But then they don't hit all the stuff that's farther back that the admins can get access to. And you can set this up for different levels. I was talking to Diane of the Joomla magazine. We're going to be working on, right now, everybody, when they put images on their articles, they dump them in the root directory with all the content. And I said, this has got to be getting ugly. She said, yeah, it is. So what we're going to try to set it up is so that, I don't know if it's per year or user group or whatever, but you can use the JCE to say, every time you upload an image, it's only going to be whatever this root is, but the root's going to also be based off of /2012, 2013. So you only get a year's worth of stuff there, and those are separated from the content and the articles. And you can also have it set up by their ID number. So if this person can only see the images he or she has uploaded and nobody else's. How specific do you want to get? JCE lets you go very specific. I don't know. You have to think about how manageable it is. But it's the capabilities of JCE. If you start looking at it, you can tell whether or not they can access HTML, if they do HTML or add CSS, what styles or tags you're going to allow and which ones you're not going to allow. Do you allow them to inject JavaScript or things like that? And it's a very good tool for insulating and giving them a customized back end. Do buy the premium extensions. I have no vested interest in this, but I want to give my customers the best I can. And for a year, I don't know if it's $20, $30, whatever. I mean, I couldn't imagine not be giving them the upgraded versions of File Manager, captions, or all those sorts of things. So I recommend do that. And I've even had clients who want me to create their own buttons for them. This is an Excel spreadsheet. So they just basically will collect whatever they want out of this. And they go here like they would for Word document. When they paste it in, it automatically it knows the format that it's getting this in, puts HTML tags around it. You get an HTML table. And then, of course, they'd have to manipulate it from there. Or we could maybe style it a certain way. But I mean, and maybe there's ways to even make it optional so you can say what kind of table you want. A pricing table, whatever, participant table, whatever, those sorts of things. But I mean, this is a button that, they have to use a table. Well, streamline it to a button. It costs money, takes more time, but if they really want it, this is extensible, this whole menu bar up there. But it does take time. It does take work. And does the client want to pay for it or not? I know that's an issue. But we can drive simplicity down towards more simplicity and ease of use if we're willing to put the effort and the client's willing to invest in that. Task-based workflows. Most people aren't talking about this, but I think it's rather important. Again, think of the widget where you got step 1, step 2, step 3 guiding you through. We have a lot of tasks people come in to do. They want to manage testimonials. They want to manage the restaurant menus. They want to manage events. They want to, here's customized inventory, and I'm going to use that as my example. But they come in, they have a particular task they want to do. So think of this as going back to the pet store I mentioned earlier. Let's just say we're going to do this with a CCK because it's easier for us. We can create all these fields, and hey, it's easy for us to do, so we're doing it. Well, let's look what the user has to do to go through it. First, they have to know they have to go to the components. Why components? I don't know. It's not It's not the most, I mean, if they start learning Joomla, they'll know what a component is. But they go to this thing like K2, and the client might say, I'm selling puppies. That should be K9, not K2. And that's a legitimate question, right? They don't know what K2 is. And then they go over there, well, items makes the most sense, but you got to read through to make sure I'm not missing. Is it really items or, yeah, I guess it is. So you're making them do a lot of extra thinking, giving them more choices they don't necessarily have. That's 3 steps. Now we come here, they got to select the right category because we're using K2 for other things, let's say. And then they got to find the right item and select. And now there's 5 steps. And then they finally get to the page. And if it was a new item, well, they didn't have to select the category earlier, but they're selecting it now. So we're still at the up 5 getting into this page. And you're on content, so you have to jump over to extra fields to edit these fields. And then you got to go to images and upload your images. Easy for us to build a CCK solution, but for our users, now we're asking them to take more work because we wanted to do it in less time and less work. That might be a fair trade-off. They don't want to pay for it. But you can see there is a price that they're paying for the fact that we go really fast in a CCK. We can do better. Look at this example. Let's think first of what you can do, and then think of how we can do it. Okay, you've seen my examples. You have a simple dashboard with a simple jumping point, puppies. You want to manage your puppy inventory. You click, you see your different puppies, you click, and there's your screen where you got all the information you want. It could have been a new, or it could be editing. You just say categories, puppies or kittens or whatever. It's got the breed. All the terms are exactly what the pet store owner wants to know. They can upload his images there, change images. 1, 2, 3, just like that. Isn't that what they want? What was that? No. Custom component. I think the best way is a custom component. But there's work to be done. However, there are some tools online. They've been I know this is the one I'm using right now. It's called Component Creator. So that's something, if you're going to write something down, that's probably the one you want to write down. There's other ones out there. There's MVC, Kendall, remember what it's called, MVC model or something like, there's other ones out there. Okay, we'll be fine. So there's other ones out there, but what you do is you go to it's free if you only have one table for the component. There's some, I'll explain how that works. So you go in there and you say, tell your name, your email address, what version it is, what version of Joomla it has to be, the basic stuff like that. Some fields filled out. And then you go to your table and you say, it's already got the basic stuff like creation date and publish date and things like that. And then you add different fields. You can add Joomla categories as one of the fields you want. You add the title, obviously. You've got, for the pet store, I might say, male, female. It's what kind of item it is. It's a Boolean, the yes, no options, drop downs, all these different, text fields. Do you want to allow them to edit? So you do all that sort of thing, and you click save or whatever. You have to register an account with them, but it's free. And then it generates a zip file. You upload it to your site. And when you want to edit your information, it's just something like this. Just like you'd expect in a component. Here's the, it tells which is required. It's got the drop downs. This is categories. Now, there is some work to be done because obviously the view it puts out is just a very vanilla drop of information. And there's no modules for it, so you got to write your modules, which aren't that hard. But I understand a lot of people go into Joomla, they're not into writing modules. But that's one of the drawbacks, but it gets you quite a ways there. The other thing is the ACL, the access control. There's no access control added to this, and you have to add it yourself. But they're constantly adding features. Recently, they just added the category, so maybe they'll be adding that later. I don't know. But you have to go in and know a little bit about that if you want to make a really fully robust component. But if you use ACL Manager, you can at least get the very basic stuff of whether or not a person can access this component. Maybe they can't do different things with different categories. But ACL Manager will allow the very, very basic, so it still works in our role-based system. But I think that works pretty well. Here's your text box. Here's a text box that you can actually, add your JCE information, and it works rather well. So I've shown you 6 techniques: front-end editing, getting a different client backend, role-based ACL, editing the client's edit screens so they're more tailored to what they want, segment the users to help give them more unique experiences, and a task-based workflow. Oh, there's a 7th one. Good documentation. The good documentation that matches their mental model, I'd like to think. This is something, I just turned something over to a client a week ago, And I realized, I put all this work, all this complexity. If I didn't have this documentation, it would be worthless for them. They wouldn't know how to use it. And so I start out with all my documentation, screenshots. I annotate that. So if they want to change anything in this section, they already know how to do headers from a different part. But if they want to change this section or any of this part and this, A, go down to A, shows what button to use, gives them a little instructions, B, that sort of thing. And they have buttons here with titles and links to it. And then go down there and it explains how they set that sort of information up. So it's kind of a complex page in that sense. But it would be worthless for them if I didn't have good documentation. So if you want to make a system usable, the best thing to do is it's intuitive. They don't need documentation. But sometimes it still is complex. Use something that matches their mental model, and make sure you put emphasis on this, because all that work you do, much of it might go for naught if they don't know how to use it. And use documentation when you need to. Again, all of this takes work for us to keep. The more work we put in, the farther down we drive it to make it more and more usable. How do we compete on usability as Joomla developers? As I mentioned, usability is very important when you're working with clients that have casual users or more business-minded teams. It can be more important than features. And the client wants both features, usually, or easy to use. And you could say, you know what, if Joomla is up here compared to the competitor, well, we'll take the people that want the features, and they'll just have to put up with the poor ease of use. And you could do that approach, but you're not competing well. Or you could, maybe if you feel Joomla is here, you say, well, we aren't going to, Joomla's got the features it has, and I think it is near the top. So we compete by basically doing something like this. If our competitor, how many of our competitors working with other projects, be they simple CMSs or a blog or something like that, how many of them are going to take the extra effort to split this so they have an admin experience and a user experience? I bet none to very few. And so if we do something like this, we have an advantage. We're offering more features. We actually can make a system that's more usable because they're doing a kind of one-size-fits-all, maybe at this level, whereas Joomla was at that level. But we're actually able to win on both sides. So the key is do a demo. Demo them what the workflow is like. Demo things like how you can edit on the front end, how you can show a very simple back end, and if they have multiple users, how it can be tailored. Show them the edit screens, show them documentations, all the things that you think that gives you a competitive edge. Demo it early. Then they go to the competitors. They're not doing this. So why does I think Joomla have an advantage in this area? Well, first, I think it's feature-rich. It's got the ACL, multilingual, it's responsive. There's on and on, several things. There's lots of extensions. I think you're all sold on the features we've got. I also think that Joomla is very conducive to having that split back end. For instance, it's what I call a reflexive background. The back end is built much the same way as the front end is. We can override it with views. We can extend it with more modules. And it's very object-oriented. And I think the last reason why is because it's the site developers, those who choose to go to Joomla, quite often are more apt to say, I want to offer a very tailored experience for my users, maybe the front end. But there are going to be a higher percentage of those willing to do the extra work. Whereas those who choose a very simple tool, they don't have any plans on doing the extra work. So I think Joomla has an advantage there. So the emphasis is check the client staff, and also shoot for simplicity. In the next year after the holidays, I'm going to be shifting more away from client work, trying to think more in this particular area. What I want to do is spend more time thinking about what we can do in order to make the split, and mostly how can we improve upon this and automate it as much as I can by experimentation, working with some clients who maybe have issues like this and see what we can do, and trying to build more components, that sort of thing. If you like the train of thought that I've given and this approach, I would like to encourage you to go to iqproject.com, sign up, so that I will let you know how things are developing once I get past the holidays and I have more time to put into that. This is the direction I have a passion on doing. I want to pursue it. And this is your way. You just come up and give me your business card, and then I'll make sure you get some information later. So that's a way, in case you like the topic and want to know more, way to keep in contact. Thank you for your attention. Enjoy.